Hey everybody, this is Crystal Carver, and along with Amber Corbin, we're going to be facilitating the article about gifted potential and poverty, a call for extraordinary action, and it's by Margie K. Catano. And one of the reasons I wanted to, jump on board with this with Amber is because she and I both teach in pretty much the same socioeconomic areas. The counties are very similar, so it was interesting to read this article and find out some of the things that Catano was talking about. So the focus of the article is actually to address the effects of poverty on gifted education. We already know that multicultural students have a harder time identifying as gifted, but if you've got a multicultural student who's living in poverty, then they're really not being identified. So we're talking about poverty more than race right now. All right, so we're going to compare income and race. So the points I have on the left are about income, and then the points on the right are about race. Catano mostly focuses on the economic impact of poor students as opposed to the racial impact of being identified as gifted. So she wants to say, or she has said, that income level and not race produces social inequality. In her article, I got the impression that she was trying to say, even if you were of a different race, if you were at a high income level or a higher income level, then that would not, the racial part wouldn't come into play when you are being identified as gifted. Okay, income also limits blacks, Hispanics, and Native American students from being high achievers. And most low-income families worry more about affording food than education. They don't put priority on buying books for their kids or, watching educational videos like some families do. They're more worried about being able to make enough money to buy food to feed their families and put a roof over their head. So as far as race is concerned, it's possible that societal responses to race will affect achievement that is independent of income level. So if you've got areas, we watched the video about the schools in Calhoun County, Georgia, and they were basically tracking black students just because they were black. So that's, racial tracking is used as a form of segregation, and usually race itself results in lower expectations and referral bias. So there's the, comparison between the two. I found this online. I thought it was interesting, and it shows the percentage of low-income students in U.S. public schools. And this was done in 2013, which I know was several years ago, but it really hits home just to look at the way that they've got this structured, the different colors. So when you see a state that's in red, that means that 51% or more of the students in that state are considered to be low income. The national average is actually 51%, and Georgia is sitting at 60%. If you can see, the number that's on the state. Mississippi is 71%. So there are some states that have a lot of children who are living in low-income families. All right, some additional factors that affect student achievement. Inadequate school resources. If the area is a poverty-stricken area and the school resides within that area, then most of the time they do not have the funding necessary to adequately provide what the students need. They can't buy textbooks. They may be using textbooks that are 20, 25 years old, and they don't have the resources to fully implement a gifted program and support it. Another factor will be racial and ethnic prejudice. We already talked about racial tracking, and it's still used in school districts, primarily in the South. I'm not going to say the South's the only place, but we know that it still goes on in some southern states. And another thing is families' limited educational resources. As I said before, families are more concerned with putting food on the table, so they can't afford books or other supplies that actually help in educating their children. And most of the parents in these low-income families may also not have even a high school education. Okay, another factor that can affect student achievement is cultural differences. Tests used to identify gifted students are often biased to those who are culturally different, especially when it comes to language. All right, 63.7% of children under the age of 18 are living in poverty are also Black or Hispanic. Now, this did come from 2002, the Bureau of Census, and I know that is a long time ago because we're in 2019, but I couldn't find any comparison that put those specific races in the same category. So I thought that was just a huge percentage, and I'm sure it's probably not changed much from that since 2002, but that's a lot, guys. And then 23% is the number of poor children in the United States who are either first or second generation immigrants. So a lot of people who have immigrated to the United States within the past 20 or 30 years have not really been able to be successful enough to where they would be above the poverty line. So we've got a lot of children of immigrants who are still living in poverty, and probably, not only do they have that against them as far as maybe being qualified for gifted, but they may also have some type of language barrier too, and that would prevent them from being identified as gifted. Okay, factors that affect demonstration of high achievement. These are some of the things that can cause children not to show how much they know or that they're truly gifted. The amount and quality of learning experiences in the home. Like I said before, parents don't have money to buy books for the children. They don't have money to go out to restaurants or go to movie theaters or do things, within their area on weekends. Another thing that affects children in low-income families is insufficient nutrition. They may not have enough food to eat each day, or if they do have food to eat, it could be highly processed foods that aren't very nutritious and don't really help with them being able to think while they're in class. All right, higher rates of health problems. That goes hand in hand with low-income families because they don't have the money to go to the doctor, and if the child gets sick, they may not be able to take them to the doctor or buy the medicine that they need for them to get well. Another thing, family dysfunction. There's a lot of divorce in low-income families. There's a lot of drug abuse, a lot of alcoholism, and it's not just low-income. This happens all across the board. But I know from my experience, I've had students in my classroom who are being raised by grandparents who have a father or mother who is currently in jail or in prison. And, it just causes the child not to be able to focus on anything that's going on at school. It's more about, when's dad going to get out of jail or when's mom going to get out of jail. And violent crime, that can be violence within the family, or it can be violence as far as a family member like mother or father, breaking the law and, like I said before, being incarcerated in some way. Okay, here's a quote that Catano had in the article that I thought was, pretty much says it all. Children in poverty are behind the 8 ball from the moment of conception. So if you're a multicultural student, you already have a disadvantage from other students. But if you are in poverty and you're multicultural, like I've said before, then you really are at a disadvantage and probably won't be identified as gifted even if you do have strengths and talents. So I'm going to turn the last part of this over to Amber.